The wreckage's gift. The acid rain of Nixus 7 hissed against Riven Mercer's environmental suit as he trudged through the sulphurous mist. This forsaken moon, orbiting the gas giant Callisto Prime, was where dreams came to die, and where people like Riven came to be forgotten. Once a promising xenobiologist for the Hegemony Science Division, now just another scavenger picking through toxic wreckage, searching for anything valuable enough to trade for another month's oxygen and nutrient paste. Riven's scanner beeped softly, cutting through the constant patter of corrosive droplets on his helmet. Something large had crashed beyond the ridge, recently. Fresh wrecks were rare on Nixus 7. The Hegemony had declared the moon a restricted zone years ago after the atmospheric degradation reached critical levels. Well now, Riven muttered to himself, a habit born from years of isolation, let's see what the voids delivered today. He crested the ridge and stopped short. Below him, half buried in the caustic mud, lay the broken remains of a sleek vessel. Not a standard transport or cargo hauler, this was a Hegemony research ship, its distinctive blue-white hull now scorched and torn. The vessel's designation, Empirical Dawn, was barely visible through the damage. Riven whistled low. Research vessel this far out? That's not standard protocol. His scanner showed no emergency beacons, no signs of survivors. Whatever happened had been catastrophic and complete. Riven approached cautiously, decades of experience telling him that Hegemony wrecks could be treacherous, booby-trapped or carrying dangerous specimens. The ship's main hull was cracked open like an egg, its contents spilled across the toxic landscape. Most systems were fried, but Riven managed to salvage some power cells and medical supplies. He was about to move to the cargo section when his scanner picked up a faint energy signature from what remained of the research bay. That's odd, he murmured, adjusting his scanner. Organic and something else. The research bay was a tangle of twisted metal and shattered containment units. Riven carefully navigated the wreckage, following the signal to a sealed compartment that had somehow survived the crash intact. The containment unit was marked with Hegemony biohazard symbols and a classification code he'd never seen before, Astral Entity 03. Professional curiosity, a remnant of his scientific past, overrode his scavenger's caution. Using his plasma cutter, he carefully breached the unit's security protocols. With a soft hiss, the containment field failed, and the unit's door slid open. Inside, floating in a suspension field that flickered erratically as its power faded, was a creature unlike anything Riven had ever encountered. About the size of a small dog, it resembled a cross between a feline and a marine creature, with translucent skin that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns of deep blue and violet. 6 tendrils that looked almost like fins extended from its back, and its large, faceted eyes, completely white, seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The creature was barely alive, its biological rhythms failing as the suspension field deteriorated. Riven knew he should leave it. The Hegemony paid handsomely for return of their research specimens, but they also executed those caught tampering with classified projects. Yet something in those strange, white eyes called to him, a sentience, a desperate plea. I must be losing my mind, Riven sighed, deactivating his scanner and reaching for the creature. As his gloved hands broke through the failing suspension field, the creature's tendrils weakly curled around his wrist. A sensation like an electric current ran up his arm, not painful but intimate, as if something had brushed against his thoughts. Riven carefully placed the weakened creature in his specimen container, adjusting the atmospheric mix to match what his scanner had detected in the suspension field. Don't die on me, little star drifter, he murmured, securing the container to his back. Whatever you are, you deserve better than rotting on this toxic rock. The journey back to Riven's shelter was treacherous. The acid rain intensified, reducing visibility to mere meters. Twice he had to detour around caustic mud pools that hadn't been there that morning, Nixus 7's unstable geology constantly reshaping the landscape. All the while, he felt the creature's presence like a gentle pressure at the base of his skull, neither intrusive nor threatening, simply there. Riven's shelter was a repurposed mining module wedged between two rocky outcroppings, reinforced against the corrosive atmosphere and hidden from orbital scans by the high mineral content of the surrounding mountains. Inside was Spartan but functional, life support systems, a small lab set up salvaged from previous wrecks, and storage for his findings. Not much, but it had been home for 7 years. He placed the container carefully on his examination table and began the delicate process of creating a sustainable environment for the creature. His xenobiology training, rusty though it was, served him well as he analyzed the biological needs of his new guest. The creature required a precise mixture of noble gases and trace elements that fortunately could be synthesized from his existing supplies. As Riven worked through the night, the creature's condition stabilized. Its bioluminescent pattern strengthened, pulsing in what seemed like rhythm with Riven's own heartbeat. By morning, its eyes had cleared from cloudy white to a brilliant silver blue that reminded Riven of distant stars. "You're something special, aren't you?" Riven murmured, watching as the creature explored its new environment, tendrils gracefully propelling it through the atmosphere he'd created. "The question is, what does the hegemony want with you? And why bring you to this forsaken moon?" As if in response, the creature swam through the air to the container's transparent wall. It pressed a tendril against the barrier, and that strange mental brush came again, stronger this time. Not words, not exactly, but impressions, gratitude, curiosity, and beneath it all, a deep, ancient loneliness that resonated with Riven's own isolation. "Well," Riven said softly, pressing his hand against the outside of the container, matching the creature's gesture, "I guess we're both strays now. I'll call you Lumina, seems fitting for something that glows like the heart of a star." The creature, Lumina, pulsed brightly, its patterns changing to match the colors of Riven's environmental suit. The mental impression deepened, a wordless connection forming between them. Outside, the acid rain continued to fall, and somewhere beyond the toxic clouds, Riven knew the hegemony would already be missing their specimen. He should turn it in, collect the reward, maybe even secure passage off this hellish moon. But looking at Lumina, watching its delicate tendrils dance in patterns that seemed almost joyful, Riven made his decision. "Guess I'm not quite the cold-hearted scavenger I thought I was," he said with a rueful smile. "Don't worry, little star drifter. You're safe now." As night fell on Nixus 7, Riven began disabling the tracking components he'd found embedded in Lumina's containment unit. Whatever this creature was, whatever purpose the hegemony had intended for it, Riven wouldn't let them reclaim it without a fight. For the first time in years, he had something worth protecting, a strange companion in this toxic wasteland, a connection to something beyond mere survival. And somewhere in the depths of space, an alert was already blinking on a hegemony command console, Astral Entity 03, signal lost. Part 3, The Hunter's Pursuit. The bunker shook as another patrol ship roared overhead, its sensors sweeping the toxic landscape for any sign of them. 2 days had passed since their narrow escape, and the hegemony had escalated their search from mere salvagers to military-grade trackers. Riven pressed his eye to the periscope mechanism he jury-rigged from salvaged parts, watching as armored figures methodically combed the ridge above them. "They're getting closer," he muttered, pulling back from the viewer. "And they've brought track hounds." Across the cramped space, Lumina pulsed with concern. The creature had grown stronger during their brief respite, its bioluminescent patterns now displaying complex geometric shapes that shifted with its moods. Currently, those patterns revealed agitation, sharp angles and rapid flashes of deep crimson. "I know," Riven responded to the unspoken worry. "Trackhounds can detect biological signatures through 10 meters of solid rock. We can't stay here much longer." The mental impression from Lumina carried urgency mixed with determination. Images flowed into Riven's mind, the distant mountain range beyond the caustic plains, caves reaching deep into untouched regions of the moon's crust. Places where even the hegemony's advanced technology might be confounded. "That's at least 3 days' journey across completely exposed terrain," Riven countered, checking his dwindling supplies. "And we'd need to cross the Barrens." "The Barrens," a 50-kilometer stretch of Nixus 7's surface where the atmospheric poisoning had reached its peak. Even in his environmental suit, Riven could only survive there for hours before the toxins worked through the filters. No one ventured into the Barrens voluntarily. Lumina's response was immediate, an impression of protection, of symbiosis. The creature drifted closer, its tendrils extending toward Riven's environmental suit, particularly the filtration system. "You can enhance the filters?" Riven asked, understanding dawning. "Protect me from the toxins?" Affirmation flowed through their connection, but with a warning undercurrent. Such protection would drain Lumina's energy reserves considerably. The creature would be vulnerable afterward. Before Riven could respond, a warning light flashed on his console. The proximity sensors had detected movement, directly above the bunker. The trackhounds had found them. "Decision made," Riven said grimly, grabbing his emergency pack and the portable containment unit. "We're heading for the Barrens. Now." They slipped out through the emergency exit, a narrow shaft that descended deeper into the moon's crust before connecting with an abandoned mining tunnel. Behind them, Riven activated the bunker's self-destruct sequence. The resulting explosion would collapse the tunnels, buying them precious time. The mining tunnel was pitch black and barely tall enough for Riven to stand upright. He navigated by the faint glow of Lumina's bioluminescence and his helmet's failing night vision. The creature stayed close, occasionally sending pulses of awareness when obstacles loomed in the darkness. "Command, this is Captain Gerald. We've confirmed presence of target Echo 7 and an unidentified accomplice. Bunker was booby-trapped, lost 2 trackhounds in the detonation. Tunnels collapsed, but scans indicate they're heading east. Request permission to deploy seekers." The voice crackled through Riven's stolen comm unit. He'd managed to hack into the hegemony's tactical frequency during their brief rest in the bunker. The response was immediate and chilling. "Permission granted, Captain. Colonel Auric wants that specimen intact at all costs. The accomplice is expendable. Lethal force authorized." Riven glanced at Lumina, who had obviously sensed his spike of fear. "Auric," he whispered. "That explains the resource allocation. He doesn't give up easily." Colonel Forrest Auric, the hegemony's most decorated military scientist and head of the Xenobiological Weapons Division. If he was personally overseeing the recovery operation, Lumina was even more valuable than Riven had suspected. After 3 hours of navigating the twisted tunnels, they reached an exit point near the edge of the Barrens. Riven peered cautiously through the rusted grate. The landscape before them was a nightmare vision, a vast plain where even the rocks had been corroded into bizarre formations by the toxic atmosphere. The air itself was visible as a yellowish haze, occasionally lit by electrical discharges from the perpetual storm clouds above. "Last chance to change your mind," Riven said to Lumina. "Once we're out there, there's no turning back." The creature's response was unwavering confidence. It positioned itself near the filtration system of Riven's suit, tendrils extending to interface with the equipment. The sensation was strange, like cool water flowing through Riven's veins as Lumina's energy merged with the suit's systems. The filters hummed with new efficiency, and the heads-up display showed toxicity levels dropping to tolerable ranges. "Remarkable," Riven breathed, watching as Lumina's bioluminescence dimmed slightly from the effort. "Thank you." They emerged onto the caustic surface and began their desperate journey. The Barrens stretched before them, a no-man's land that had claimed countless lives since Nixus 7's environmental collapse. Riven set a punishing pace, aware that every minute in this hellscape drained Lumina's energy reserves. Behind them, the whine of seeker drones echoed across the tortured landscape. Small, fast, and lethal, the autonomous hunters could navigate the toxic atmosphere with ease. Their only advantage was that the extreme conditions interfered with the drone's more sensitive tracking systems. Hours into their journey, with the mountain still a distant silhouette, disaster struck. A sudden violent discharge from the storm clouds above them, all too common in the Barrens, overloaded Riven's suit systems momentarily. It was only seconds, but enough for 3 seeker drones to lock onto their position. Down! Riven shouted unnecessarily as the first drone screamed toward them, its weapons primed. What happened next would haunt Riven's dreams for years to come. Lumina detached from his suit and shot upward, directly into the path of the oncoming drone. Instead of evading, the creature's body expanded, tendrils elongating to impossible proportions. As the drone made contact, Lumina's bioluminescence flared with blinding intensity. The drone simply disintegrated, its components turning to dust that scattered on the toxic wind. The other 2 drones met similar fates, but each destruction exacted a visible toll on Lumina. By the time the threat was neutralized, the creature's once vibrant glow had dimmed to a faint flicker. "What did you just do?" Riven whispered, awestruck, as Lumina weakly returned to him. The mental impression he received was faint but clear, an image of energy being absorbed, transformed, and released. A fundamental ability of Lumina's species, but one that required tremendous energy expenditure. A celestial guardian indeed, Riven murmured, gently placing the weakened creature into the portable containment unit. "Rest now. I'll carry us both from here." As he resumed their trek across the barrens, Riven couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just witnessed only a fraction of what Lumina was truly capable of, and why Colonel Auric was so determined to recapture his prize specimen. 3 weeks had passed since Riven had rescued Lumina from the wreckage, and the creature's recovery continued to astound him. What had begun as a fragile, dying entity now moved with growing strength and purpose through the specialized habitat Riven had constructed in his shelter's main chamber. The acid storms had intensified outside, trapping them together in the reinforced mining module. For once, Riven didn't mind being confined. Each day brought new discoveries about his extraordinary companion. "You're not just recovering," Riven observed, watching Lumina navigate through a series of obstacles he'd created to test its abilities. "You're evolving." Lumina's body had changed subtly but significantly. Its once translucent skin now contained swirling patterns that resembled distant nebulae, and the 6 tendrils had grown longer, more articulated. Most remarkably, the creature had developed what appeared to be neural nodes along its spine, small, glowing protrusions that pulsed in complex sequences. The mental connection between them had strengthened as well. While not exactly telepathy, Riven could now interpret Lumina's emotional states and basic intentions through the gentle pressure in his mind. Curiosity felt like a tingling at his temples, contentment spread warmth across his consciousness, danger triggered sharp, cold pulses. Riven's scanner chimed, interrupting his observations. The perimeter sensors had detected something, movement on the ridge overlooking the shelter. He quickly dimmed the habitat's illumination and moved to the security console. "We've got company," he muttered, watching the grainy footage. 3 figures in specialized environmental suits were making their way down the slope, their equipment marking them as salvagers, but not the usual desperate sort. These moved with military precision, carrying weapons-grade cutting tools and scanners. "They're tracking something," Riven realized, his stomach tightening. "Tracking you." Lumina's response was immediate, a sensation of urgent warning followed by something new, images flooding Riven's mind of the research vessel, of men in similar suits, of pain and intrusion. Not memories shared, Riven understood, but a desperate attempt to communicate danger. "I understand," he whispered, gathering emergency supplies. "They want you back. But they'll have to find us first." Riven activated the shelter's emergency protocols. Years of paranoia had led him to install multiple escape routes and countermeasures. As the salvagers approached the main entrance, he transferred Lumina to a portable containment unit modified to mimic the creature's preferred atmosphere. "This won't be comfortable," he apologized as Lumina squeezed into the confined space, "but it will keep you alive until we reach the secondary shelter." The mental impression he received in return carried resignation but also trust, complete trust. It humbled him. As the salvagers began cutting through the exterior locks, Riven and Lumina slipped through a narrow maintenance shaft that led deep into the mountainside. Behind them, timed charges destroyed Riven's lab equipment and any evidence of Lumina's presence. The explosion would buy them time, making the salvagers believe they had triggered a booby trap rather than a deliberate distraction. The journey through Nix's 7's treacherous landscape was harrowing. The acid rain had created new hazards, wide pools of caustic liquid that ate through standard protective gear in minutes. Riven navigated by memory and the faint glow of his emergency beacon, keeping to the underground tunnels left by the moon's abandoned mining operations whenever possible. Lumina remained quiet in its containment unit, but Riven felt its presence monitoring his vital signs, occasionally sending waves of alertness when his focus wavered. After 6 hours of grueling travel, they reached the backup shelter, little more than a reinforced bunker with basic life support systems, hidden beneath a collapsed geological formation that shielded it from orbital scans. "Home sweet home," Riven muttered, securing the heavy door behind them. "At least until we figure out our next move." Once inside and certain they weren't followed, Riven released Lumina from the containment unit. The creature emerged cautiously, its bioluminescence dimmed to conserve energy. It drifted around the small space, investigating every corner before returning to hover near Riven. "I need to know what we're dealing with," Riven said, activating his portable data terminal. "Why the hegemony wants you so badly?" Using salvaged access codes from his scientific days, Riven tapped into the fragmented remains of the hegemony's research network. Most classified information was beyond his reach, but he found fragments, project names, redacted reports, and one partially corrupted file on astral entities. What Riven discovered sent a chill through him. The hegemony hadn't merely been studying creatures like Lumina, they were weaponizing them. The file contained references to energy conversion capabilities and consciousness manipulation potential, along with casualty reports from failed containment incidents. "They were trying to turn you into a weapon," Riven said softly. "But something went wrong during transport. The crash wasn't an accident, it was you, wasn't it? You fought back." Lumina's response was complex: sorrow, affirmation, and a deep weariness. Images flickered through Riven's mind, other entities like Lumina, confined and suffering, experiments that twisted their natural abilities, and finally, Lumina's desperate attempt to escape, which had resulted in the ship's crash. "You're the last one," Riven realized. "That's why they're hunting so aggressively." The creature drifted closer, its tendrils extending to brush against Riven's hand. The connection deepened, and for the first time, Riven felt something beyond emotions and images, a concept, a name, in a language with no spoken words: Celestial Guardian. "That's what you are?" Riven asked, awed. "A guardian of what?" But Lumina had exhausted its strength. Its bioluminescence dimmed as it settled into a resting state atop Riven's abandoned pack. Questions would have to wait. Outside, the acid rain continued to fall, but now carried a new sound, the distant hum of transport engines. The hunters were expanding their search. Riven checked his supplies and weapons. "Rest while you can, little guardian," he murmured. "I have a feeling our journey's just beginning."